up, YouTube? What's up, YouTube? It's your boy back with another one. People, in today's video, we want to find out if the EFF is growing or is it dying. Let me know what you think about this topic in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. You know we family, right? Hello. People, the EFF. How are they faring? Since its inception, what, 10, 11, 12 years ago, the EFF has grown in leaps and bounds, right? And one would think that being the third largest party in South Africa, they would, by now, they would unseat the DA in sheer numbers because the DA is predominantly popular in the Western Cape and nowhere else. If we have to take the Western Cape away from the DA, I'm sure the DA will slide right down the scales of political uh, abyss, I guess, you know. But today I want to focus on the EFF and why, whether or not they are growing, and have they grown to the levels that they were hoping for, and have they reached the numbers that they have been hoping for, right? Now let's start where when they came out, they were predominantly for the youth, and I still think they very much still for the youth, right? But the EFF seems to, okay, when they started off, it's first for the youth, right? They had this messaging pro Africa, all the youth, they wanted the old people out, a new dawn, and a lot of young people resonated with Malema, and they still do. But after 10 years of the same messaging, I'm beginning to believe that the EFF has now hit a ceiling. They have now stagnated because they haven't brought anything new to the table. Now, why am I saying this? The EFF has good messaging, they have good marketing, they have good, everything is on point when it comes to the EFF, right? The only thing lacking that I think with the EFF is the vision, is the execution. Now, you may talk a good game, but when it comes time to execute, are you going to execute as well as you talk? Now, having said all the good things that Malema has said over the years, what has come out of all that? For me, all that translated almost into nothing. Because Malema was able to fill up stadiums, while the EFF was able to fill up stadiums. The EFF was able to garner a lot of votes. They've grown to be the third largest party, if I'm not mistaken. I think recent pollings now show that the MK is fast becoming the party to reckon with. And to be honest, I think if anyone is going to diminish any hopes for the EFF, it's going to be the MK party, right? But the EFF, to be honest, have done quite significant in terms of his standing in the political landscape of South Africa, right? But the only problem they seem to be having is growth. Now, why is that? Now, to be honest, growing the ANC isn't an issue, all right? Where the issue lies is the messaging that Malema wants to actually portray to the world, right? Now, Malema keeps repeating the same things over and over again, which is not a bad thing, right? Which is really not a bad thing because if you really come to look at it, Malema does say sensible things, real things, and he does say things that actually matter to the average South African. and it actually speaks to the heart of the Black South Africans and how they really feel, right? Which is a big problem for certain societies within South Africa and obviously globally, right? So, should Malema tone down his messaging? Should Malema adapt his party ways? Should Malema become more right leaning? Should Malema be, um, pro business? Right? If Malema did all these things that people ask of him, demand of him, wish of him, wouldn't they be turning him into the ANC? I mean, the real reason why Malema does what he does is to differentiate himself from the ANC, right? Malema talks in a military way, very militant, very, should I say, direct, very brash, you know, upfront and very straight to the point, take no prisoner type of approach. Is this good for politics? When you're young and you're impressionable, then Malema's messaging and tone is just the thing you want to hear. Because an example is like in hip hop music. If you've ever listened to young rappers and young hip hop artists and young hip hop heads, they first real taste of hip hop and that eager go getter, that go getterness, and that whole hunger for success comes from the hardcore rappers. They come in hardcore, hunger, take with your DMXs, your Eminems, your Tupacs. You know, the guys that came in with that hardcore, your NWAs, your public enemies, you know? Then as the hip hop head gets older, then they begin to take a more philosophical approach. And then you start listening to your more, you know, Andre 3000s, your Outcasts, your Jay-Z's, your Biggie Smalls, you know, your Puff Daddies and your Nas and your Kanye West. You see what I'm saying? So it's evolution, right? It happens mentally. So same with the political brain. The younger you are, just like, yeah, 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 let's go get it, let's take it. Yes, let's bash it down, let's burn it down. That's when you're young. 18, 19, 20 years old, 21, hey, that's all you know. Then as you get into your late 20s and your early 30s, the messaging then becomes, nah, if we burn it down, who's going to rebuild it? If we take it, can we maintain it? That kind of situation, right? So the ANC does not appeal to all demographics. They do not appeal to all age groups. They have a particular age group that they target. Hence, they've reached the glass ceiling. Hence, they've stagnated. Now, if we have to look at some of the reasons why the top brass have left, right? Yes, most notably, it would definitely be personal reasons. But in all honesty, I would truly, honestly believe that it has to do with clashing of heads, bumping of heads with Julius Malema, because I feel like Julius is bigger than the party. Because if a leader like Nelson Mandela has more followers than his party, then I feel like he holds sway. Because if Malema has to go, the party would die out. So, and then Malema, being bigger than the party, feels like his say is the final say, and his say is to appeal to that specific demographic and no one else. Then you get the other lieutenants that come in and say, the other lieutenants, they come in and say, but we need a bigger fan base now. We need a bigger support base. And then he says, no, we'll appeal to the youth. they will get it and they'll grow in numbers because the youth are like the biggest category in the country, right? The problem with only speaking to one age group or demographic or just one specific group is that it stifles your growth. Now, the EFF, like I said, the EFF has good, sound, logical, pro-left, pro-social, pro-communist, pro-poor ideologies. And that is perfectly great. That's a great recipe for political success. Now, the execution and to who the target audience is becomes the issue. Now, you can't tell me that since inception, Malema has failed to succeed or to surpass the DA as the second largest party in South Africa. Because on paper, the EFF is popular in all provinces. Everywhere Malema goes, he fills up stadiums. So it's hard to believe that there isn't the support base. Now, filling up stadiums and going to stand in queues and actually voting are two totally different things. So a lot of people go to these EFF rallies at these stadiums. Most of them are not there for the political side of things. They are there for the entertainment side of things. Because if you go to a stadium, what are you going to see there? You're going to get women. You're going to get men. You're going to get music. You're going to get alcohol. You're going to get all this party vibe things going on. And a lot of people go for that. And top that off, some of them even get free t-shirts, free berets, free caps. If you're lucky enough, a free jacket. So does that not translate into proper voters, proper supporters? If not, then there's something wrong in the marketing, in the messaging, in the target audience. So, does the EFF need to change, drastically need to change, overhaul its policies? Does it need to change its target audience? Does it need to change its vision board? Does it need to change its manifesto? Does it need to change its position? What would it take for the EFF to surpass the DA? Because, yeah, the DA has grown, not by much, I think by about 2 or 3%, but the DA has only grown because of frustration people have with the ANC. It's not organic growth that people just believe in the DA. Because if people believed in the DA, then the rest of the provinces would have significant DA numbers, but they don't. The mere fact that the ANC is the leading party by less than half, less, less than half of the votes, and the DA is the second by about half of what the ANC got. That says a lot. I mean, how long has the DA been in existence for? And by definition, the DA by now is supposed to have closed the gap organically on the ANC. But even that they didn't. The only reason why they managed to gain that 2 or 3% was simply because people who had faith in the ANC have now lost faith in the ANC and just throwing caution to the wind and taking the next best thing. People just want change. The ANC also lost voters to the PA. PA is another growing party. Very small, but a growing party nonetheless. Again, they got votes from the ANC. They stole votes from the ANC. Another big winner of votes from the ANC, we actually made a huge dent in the ANC's voter base, was obviously the MK party. They gained a lot because they just shot up the charts, came out of nowhere and just shot up the charts. Obviously, thank you to the KwaZulu Natal uh, support base, and in large part, thank you to Jacob Zuma. So, what can the EFF do to improve their position in South African politics? Not much. But the small things they can do will have a huge impact going forward if they make these small changes. Next, we get into the pros of the EFF party in South Africa, and let's see how that goes. Holler. People, by definition, the ANC is a spent force. The ANC is now clinging to power. In most cases, they're clutching at straws. The ANC is now in survival mode. They are heavily dependent on smaller parties for them to be in existence at this point. They're not solely existing because of their sheer brilliance and the sheer stranglehold on power that they once had in the early 90s and early 2000s. Where does the EFF fit in all this? Now, the EFF can simply do one of two things. One, the ANC needs to tone down its messaging, right? They must stop being so brash, so direct, so brutal, so harsh, so what's the word? So militant in their approach to politics. Because even the young voter base that they're hoping to target are themselves now growing out of that whole militant approach. So the militant approach can no longer apply as people get older. And by older, I don't even mean people getting into their 40s. No. From just a transition from the teen years to your 20s, just that transition alone, people become mature. People are learning new things. People learn. People learn. People are becoming wiser. And then they realize that, whoa, we cannot be so brutal in our messaging, right? That's one. Number two, I think that EFF needs to the EFF, I said tone down, right? Then I said the EFF needs to appeal to a wider age range. And they should not just focus on the youth. You see, because now the EFF is regarded as a youth-centric party, or that's how it's seen at least. The majority of the black youth in South Africa kind of like vote, see themselves within the EFF, right? Whereas the older people decide, nah, that's for the young. So like basically the EFF is the amapiano of politics, right? And whereas like the ANC and MK, they are more like the house music, the neo soul, the Afro jazz, the R&B, the pop, the more subtle and not so hardcore party animals, of the politics of the political sphere, right? So so that's what the ANC needs to do on the positive side of things. If they change those two things, I think that would greatly change the demographic of their positioning and of their supporter base within the South African political system. Third thing, I think the EFF need to transition from a Malema party to an organization that is not led by a certain name. They need to find a way to make the party the brand and not make Malema the brand. If they can get these three things right, I promise you, the EFF will become a strong contender for the presidential campaigns in the years moving forward. That's my personal take on it. You know what I mean? That is the pros that they can try. Then the pros of having the presence of the EFF within South African politics. Every right leaning party needs an opposition of the left leaning side, right? So the EFF is a good counter to the DA's right, to the what they call this party here, to the Freedom Front Plus, and to the DA, the Freedom Front Plus, and the Referendum Party, and all those other right leaning parties, right? The EFF is the ultimate alternative to that. Secondly, the EFF acts like the youth league of the ANC because the ANC does not have a youth league. I mean, they're trying their best to create one, and with the EFF, I don't think that the ANC Youth League stands a chance. Even the parent party is dying out. So, what good would a youth league bring if the parent body is dying out? You know what I mean? And the parent, the youth league that the ANC is trying to create will have to contend and compete with the EFF, which I don't think stands a chance at this present moment in time. It's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? So the EFF, that's what they're good for. They're good opposition to the right leaning parties. They're also a good opposition to all the, I would like to say, to all the anti African talk, all the negativity surrounding Africa, and just the whole, they're trying to bring a perspective that Africa is part of South Africa, and they're trying to mesh the two together, right? Trying to make sure and trying to make people understand. Because for a very long time, a lot of South Africans have never really believed, or they act like South Africa is not in Africa, and like it's always a us and them story. And now the EFF is the only party that's really singing their tune of it's only us together, not us and them, but it's us as in one. So the EFF is very strong on that. So I think a lot of people wouldn't have known that African brothers and sisters are like, all one if Malema didn't push that logic very hard. So that's another plus that I should give them as well. Yeah. So those are the pros that I can think of about the EFF. Let me know if you know of any other pros. Next, we get into the cons. You know how we do. Holler. Yo, the cons of the EFF. Number one, I think the real thing that brought down the EFF was their pro open border policy, their pro African stance, and their whole we are one, we are African and Nigerian brothers and sisters. I think their messaging is still too early, still too young for the South African political elite and political parties and for the political spectrum because the majority of South Africans are not on board at the moment with having foreigners flooding South Africa. And the EFF missed that one, right? If the EFF could distance itself from the whole open border policy and the whole we are one with the foreigners, I think they would have garnered more votes than what they did in the previous election, and they would have grown much more if they had distanced themselves from that whole open border policy and the we are one with all these foreigners who are committing crimes, who are just seen as a negative influence on the economy and just being a negative nuisance in South Africa as a whole, right? Number three, the EFF totally loses it with your militant messaging. That's just the thing that I think riles up most white South Africans, because the majority of them look at Malema as a terrorist, as a communist, as a all the negative things that you can talk about. Even if he's talking about something good, the delivery, the way he speaks, just the threatening messaging, and then that's just what kills them. Last but not least, the famous song "Kill the Farmer, Kill the Boer." That, I think, really put a dent in the EFF's political campaign. I really think that really did them a disservice. I think at some point the EFF has to let go of those struggle songs, because the struggle is real, the struggle is still on. It's just not that type of a struggle. This is a new struggle now. So the EFF need to find a new song that will appeal to this modern day struggle, and no longer talk about kill the farmer, kill the boer, because this is a new phase. This is a new war. This is a new struggle that the youth are now facing. It's not the old war. It's not the old struggle. So Malema and the party need to come up with a new slogan, new song, and a new approach to fighting the new economical war that we are facing. People, let me know if I was on the money with this one, or if I totally missed it with this one. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. You know, hate speech is always welcome. Holler!